Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and taking part in the webinar press briefing COVID-19 and after, organized by the TLP, the LINAVA, and the TTLA, with patronage of the Polish Confederation Lewiatan and the LPK. My name is Adam Dorywalski. I work as a permanent representative of TLP in Brussels, and I will be a moderator of today's press briefing. We'll start with short presentations of our speakers, which in total should take around 30 minutes. Our speakers represent employers' associations, companies, and we have also one professional truck driver with us. After presentations, you will be able to ask questions. If you want to ask question, please write on your chat a word question, and then I will be giving a voice to you in sequence. As long as you're not speaking, please switch off your microphones and cameras. When I give voice to one of you, then of course you're warmly welcome to switch on your camera as well. In case of technical difficulties, you can also write your question. I will read it then. For your information, our webinar is recorded. After explaining the rules of proceeding, I would like to give the floor to the President of TLP, Mr. Wroński, and Transport Policy Director, Mr. Gerwolz, who will share the recent findings about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on transport sector in Poland and Lithuania. Gentlemen, each of you have 5 minutes maximum. Mr. Wroński, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for participating in our press webinar mobility package COVID-19 and after. One of the targets of the mobility package has been to improve drivers' working condition and to take into account the nature of road transport while implementing the revised Posted Workers Directive. We fully agree with and support all measures leading to improvement of working conditions for our drivers. In our view, it's particularly important to make the profession of drivers more interesting for young people and women. Despite a rather critical assessment of the mobility package as a whole, we therefore welcome the willingness to act in this area. Supporters and critics of the mobility package have to agree that its implementation is associated with high cost, especially for small and medium-sized companies. Imagine a carrier with 3 vehicles, which would have to hire an additional employee for the administrative services associated with the package itself and use several lawyers who are specialists in the national labor law of the country where he will provide services. This is just one of the many consequences of new rules. Even in a good period, this cost would be a serious problem. And yet, everything indicates that economic collapse associated with the coronavirus pandemic will be of a long-term nature. And in this situation, it does not seem wise to introduce solutions that will lead to significant increase in the cost and introduce other barriers in single market, especially as the pandemic itself has already resulted in significant job losses in the road transport sector. Research conducted with the participation of our association Transport and Logistics Poland on the Polish market show that only 5% of hauliers keep their jobs at the level from before the pandemic. While at the beginning of the crisis, over 8% of companies had no problems with the lack of transport orders, and in the case of 20%, these were minor problems. Today, almost the whole industry declares a serious drop out in turnover. 1 in 5 companies has already reduced employment. Another 20% of employers are now considering such action. Another 18% will do it if the crisis lasts another month. In this state of affairs, it's clear that the prospect of mass layoffs in the industry is becoming more and more visible on the horizon. It's worth pointing out there that International Labour Organization calls on social partners worldwide to take urgent action to ensure business continuity and income security in order to prevent the spread of the highly negative effects of COVID-19. At the same time, European institutions focus their work on the legislative proposals that increase cost and legal instability, such as a mobility package. This directly threatens the business continuity of many small and medium-sized enterprises. I will therefore ask a rhetorical question. What should be the priority of European Union institution under COVID-19? The mobility package or pan-European recovery programs supporting businesses? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wroński. Now I'm giving the floor to Mr. Garwolis. You have 5 minutes maximum. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I will talk a bit about impact of COVID-19 to Lithuanian transport sector. As you know, the pandemic is unprecedented in its speed and scale for people, businesses, and economies, while its outcome are still too difficult to predict. But anyway, we appreciate all the actions of the EU institutions and member states as well, and governments fighting this crisis. The distortions of economies resulted in reduced demand, aggressive competition, into examples of operators working on minimal or even negative margins. Lithuanian hauliers facing this highly challenging and uncertain business environment have been struggling to ensure continuity of operations among EU member states, fulfilling contractual obligations to clients and preserving jobs and financial stability. Lithuanian transport sector is the largest in the EU, totaling about 13% of our GDP and exceeding EU average more than 2.6 times. And according to survey made by our association, 93% of respondents have already experienced a decrease in the volume of orders and turnovers. 82% reduction of truck fleet in use, 72% delays of payment, 95% of hauliers believe there will be even more decline in turnover during the second quarter of 2020. Another institution, the Baltic Institute for Research and Development, one of the Lithuania's think tanks, has most recently presented a study on COVID-19 impact on Lithuanian road transport companies. The main findings are, depending on scenario, of course, Lithuanian hauliers could face from 9 to 27 decrease of outputs. Worst case scenario, if lockdowns and restrictions remain until autumn, from 94 to 98% of transport companies could be at risk of insolvency, and from 34 to 48,000 of jobs in sector could be at risk as well. And losses in road transport could result in 1.3 up till 2.7% of drop of Lithuanian GDP. Yeah, situation is quite scary, but anyway, we are looking and we have to look for better times now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garwolis. After sharing with us views on impact of pandemic on transport sector in Poland and Lithuania, I would like to ask you both to share with us your views regarding the threat posed by the mobility package on level playing field at the single market and the Green Deal, which are also very well expressed in the position of 10 employers federations, including LPK from Lithuania, Leviathan from Poland, but also BDI from Germany. Each of you have 3 minutes maximum. We'll start with Mr. Wroński. Please, the floor is yours.
Coronavirus pandemic exposed the solution in the package that do not relate to the new rules of the posting of workers or improvements in the social condition of drivers. We need a common approach to access to parking, showers and sanitation, as well as accommodation for drivers across the European Union. This infrastructure should be safe and gender-friendly for drivers. It's worrying that the real criterion in mobility package refers to the nationality of the transport operator and not to objective reasons. The rules divide transport operation into those related to the country of establishment of haulier and those unrelated. This leads to perception of the European Union as 27 national markets rather than a common single market with full equal access rules for operators. We therefore strongly oppose new rules. For example, drivers normally working in operation center means that international drivers should work mainly in their home country, which limits, of course, the international nature of their work, especially in cross-strait operation. It's a protectionist in nature, significantly limiting the current freedoms within the single market. In addition, there is a need to pay attention to the climatic consequences of the restriction in international transport operation. The regulation do not allow taking the load where it's closest to the vehicle, reducing pollutant emission and increasing transport efficiency, but they allow the vehicle to travel several hundred kilometers in unladen mode. This unclear and economically unreasonable provision will not improve the quality of drivers' working condition. On the contrary, they will introduce risks associated with doubts regarding the correct interpretation of the law. I would like to strongly underline that we take the Green Deal and the challenge of reducing emission in transport sector very seriously. The fleet of Polish carriers used for international transport services meets the highest possible standards in terms of greenhouse gas emission. 85% of the vehicles meet Euro 6 and Euro 5 standards. Moreover, in the time of coronavirus, additional administrative requirements for the foreign drivers and unequal public aid for domestic companies hinder the mobility of service in the European Union. Therefore, the mobility package in times of pandemic and after pandemic is only an overregulation, increasing the cost of transport activities, leading to the elimination of smaller and weaker operators. Business cannot afford our single market to be weakened in this way at the time when its proper working is becoming crucial for the continent's economic recovery after the coronavirus crisis. On the contrary, we must consolidate the single market and fight protectionism. We therefore call on European Union policymakers not to ignore these extraordinary circumstances and to avoid approving controversial rules. The mobility package 1 should be carefully revised and it should be coherent, balanced and legally sound. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wroński. Mr. Garuolis, please tell us all about the impact of the mobility package on the single market and the Green Deal. I also know that you have very interesting findings about third countries' parents. You have 3 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We are afraid that these negative impacts of the crisis and the after effects on the business climate and economies in the EU will be deepened by the mobility package, posing a major risk for the recovery of transport companies and supply chains, as well as the sector sustainable transformation. I mean, it's a really bad combination, COVID and mobility package at once. Lithuanian hauliers have estimated that due to return of trucks obligation, 7 peripheral EU member states like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria alone will emit additionally 3.2 million tons of CO2 per year. 570,000 trucks will be returning home every 8 weeks, navigating hundreds of millions suboptimal or empty kilometers annually. And The reality will be like this, and it's just about to check in Eurostat, and figures are here. As a result, the European transport system and businesses will face inefficiencies, high fuel consumption, and lack of transport capacity, while EU people will encounter more pollution. We welcome the Commission's initiative to assess the highly controversial obligation to return home of truck in terms of environmental and internal market impact. It is vital to get the measure of the EU and wide effect. The Commission also promises that the COVID impact on the sector will also be the factor in this analysis. However, we are concerned that the Commission's assessment will not catch up with the rush of the mobility package option. Some information about third country issue, which is not discussed widely yet for some reasons. Overall, the mobility package requirements will not be fully applicable to third country hauliers, non-European hauliers. It will hit competitiveness of European companies against third country operators. By means of so-called quota system of permits, third country hauliers have access to the EU road freight market and are able to perform bilateral and cross-trade transport operations. The European market penetration has been consistently growing due to following factors. Lower cost than EU-based hauliers. The average freight rate of Russian haulier is 50 euro cents per kilometer, compared to European, which has 1.1 euro per kilometer. Lack of internal borders within the EU and consequently inadequate inspection of permits, weak enforcement. As a result, third country hauliers are able to not obey the quota system and perform extra transport operations in the EU. Growing EU market share of third country hauliers is already being manifested by rising numbers of bilateral haulage permits awarded, for example, to Russia. Russian media reporting that Belgium increased the number of bilateral permits by 30% for 2019 and 40% for 2020. France increased by 45% between 2016 and 2019. These are the front runners, but other EU member states have also followed this course. Third country hauliers will avoid requirements on regular weekly rest ban in cabins and provision of regular return home of drivers, of course. Third country hauliers will avoid application of second generation of smart tachographs that are considered as prerequisite of effective enforcement of mobility package. Second generation smart tachographs are expected to record borders crossing as well as loads and unloads. The mobility package sets out some concrete enforcement rules, namely exchange of information in time, roadside checks at the premises. For instance, 4% of drivers' working time must be checked at the premises. Any of these will be dropped instantly by any of non-EU responsible authorities. Last but not least, increasing the EU market share of third country hauliers will bring more emission to the European roads. Based on the International Transport Forum's data, on distribution of annual CMT permits, third countries perform only up to 30% of transport operation with Euro 6 emission standard trucks, compared to 77% of Polish and 62% of Lithuanian trucks. Certainly, hauliers from peripheral EU member states working in a stiff competition with a non-compliant non-EU hauliers would be the most negatively affected among all. This would lead to a loss of employment in the EU member states, decrease of tax income, and finally will worsen social condition of those drivers. Mobility package, in fact, provides economic and administrative incentive for import of services that in no way are compatible with environmental and social ambitions of policymakers. Today, mobility package is driven by national political agendas, reversing the process of European integration, both economic and social. This is not a best strategy for EU to survive and turmoil. We hope European Commission will accept amendments concerning return of truck and will take into account issue of third countries. These two topics evidently play against the goals of Green Deal. Nevertheless, we must look for solutions, stay constructive, because basically we do not have any other choice. As per Greek storyteller Aesop, united we stand, divided we fail. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garuolis. Now, after sharing views of Mr. Wroński and Mr. Garuolis about the impact of the mobility package on the single market and the Green Deal, it would be very interesting to learn also about the perspective of companies on the mobility package implementation in times of COVID. Mr. Andrzej Szymański, who is Managing Director at Darton Freight Company, you have 4 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much and welcome, and thank you for invitation to this webinar. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Managing Director in Transport Company. We are Polish transport company with fleet of trucks, around 450 trucks. And honestly speaking, I accepted this invitation, but I was thinking about mobility package in general. Because before pandemic situation and freezing the economy in Europe, our company was not totally against the mobility package. We understand the intention of European Union, and we understand that taking care about of our employees and internal markets is very important for everyone. But unfortunately, in the meantime, we live in new situation. In fact, what was before pandemic doesn't exist anymore. I mean about the transport chain, about supply chain. In fact, before it was quite easy to plan the truck according to our vision. Today, we don't plan our trucks. The market is totally turned. Nothing exists like it was before. And today, we don't make any logistics in transports. We just plan the trucks according to what is available on the market. And I will explain you the situation about trucks coming back to their home country every 8 weeks. We are in quite good situation because we live in Poland. Our company is Polish and we have our headquarters in Poland. So we are very close to, let's say, Western Europe countries. I will show you this example on Polish and Germany countries, Poland and Germany. First of all, for example, we have 3 towns, big towns in Germany, Hanover and Munich, and in Poland this is Warsaw. Warsaw is the place that our company is located. And we have our truck in Munich. This truck must go to Poland because it's already 8 weeks abroad. Unfortunately, we have cargo to pick up in, maybe fortunately, we have cargo to pick up in Munich, but unfortunately, we have 2 options. Either we can go to France or to Italy. Unfortunately, we cannot make this transport because truck must go to Poland. So we have another solution because we have cargo in Hanover, which destination of this cargo is Poland. So what options do we have? First of all, we can go empty to Poland or go empty to Hanover to pick up the goods. But this is not in line in generally European vision on Green Deal. This is against economic, operational, and Green Deal. First of all, we will make a lot of empty mileage, empty kilometers. Secondly, operationally will be difficult to manage because we have truck which can pick up cargo which is in the same place, but we cannot because we have to go to Poland. So the cargo is still available and no trucks to realize the transport. So operationally will be disaster. And secondly, and the last, but the Green Deal is combination of economic and operational. So the last is Green Deal, but is the most important because we will make a lot of empty mileage. And I give you example of only one truck, but in fact, what we saw before, in the same situation will be 14,000 trucks daily, 14,000 trucks daily, which will have to make empty mileage in different countries. And the same situation will be when the truck will be in France and it will be Lithuanian truck. We'll have to go empty from France to Lithuania, for example, and make 2,000 kilometers empty. So from our point of view, the mobility package is not adjusted to current reality on the market. So we should forget about mobility package 1 and start working on mobility package again, adjusting to current situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Szymański. Now, Ms. Agne Margewiciute, board member of PTLA, representing transport company Hop Trans. You have 4 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
So thank you for the opportunity to join this webinar. I think it's very important to hear the feedback from various players of the market. I totally agree with what Mr. Szymański has just said. I represent a company that has around 1,000 trucks and employs over 1,000 of drivers. So main of the aspects that I want to stress, and I hope they are heard, is that just like the entire business sector, the road transport sector faces currently immense negative impact due to the current situation caused due to the pandemics, and it is still way too early to predict the final outcome and final damages that the market and the transport sector will face. And if we combine this clearly negative context that we are already facing with the implications of mobility package, especially the return home of the trucks, we are going to face major challenges. And I think probably what we predict, 30 to 40% of the transport sector in Lithuania, especially small and medium-sized hauliers, will just simply cease to exist. We see the aspect of obligatory return home of the trucks as a crucial concern currently, because it is extremely disproportionate and it's extremely discriminatory if we compare the, let's say, the hauliers market in Central Europe and the countries that are out on the periphery, such as Poland, for example, and especially Lithuania, Latvia, and other border states of the European Union. First of all, for example, we have, besides all the wonderful examples that Mr. Szymański has presented, we are looking at doubling or tripling of the trip times. If, let's say, if we do a round trip today in 3 to 4 days, the round trip with the requirements of the mobility package will extend to a period of 2 weeks, plus all the driving of empty trucks that will add to the empty kilometers and just losses in the margins. We have recently heard quite a shocking proposal by some of the proponents of the mobility package, and they invite the hauliers from Lithuania and other peripheral states to establish operational centers closer to the center of the European Union. We think that while this suggestion, of course, is feasible, because you probably have heard that, in fact, hauliers are trying to do that, but it's very, very costly, and we, in principle, oppose relocation of our business from our country, because it means not only relocation of the business itself, but it also means a relocation of the drivers, and this will have an effect both on the national economies, on the national businesses, national hauliers, and the drivers themselves. And plus, we think this is quite disproportionate and discriminatory measure if we speak about one of the main pillars of the European Union, free movement of services, of goods, of persons. So forcing businesses to relocate just so that EU legislation and EU policymakers could be satisfied with their agendas, it's extremely irrational, and we view it as disproportionate, and we hope that these suggestions will actually stop, because they are not also ethical. Also, I would like to underline that we hauliers, we support the mobility package's proposals aiming to improve the working conditions of the drivers, including the provisions on their return home. However, some of them are also untimely, and we need to reconsider if their implementation will in fact be able to take place from the practical point of view. However, we completely agree, and our company, as well as all other responsible companies, hauliers of Lithuania, we make sure in fact that drivers return home periodically, so that their trips, their working trips, do not extend beyond unreasonable times, and they are able to lead a comfortable life and have time to spend with their families and their homes. So our company, as well as some of the members of our organization, of our alliance, we invest a great deal into improving and modernizing the working conditions and working processes of our drivers. So again, we take this very seriously, and some of the hauliers could give you an example that the change of the fleet every 3 years, the improving of the fleet constantly, that adds to our constant concern about the workers of our companies that compose the main core of the company. So, but to conclude my short speech is that we have hoped that mobility package would bring more transparency and more clarity to quite a complex legislation and quite a complex framework of the transport sector. However, especially under current conditions, and especially when you hear all the negotiations, we see and we think that it has turned out that the package, because of the mentioned provisions that I have discussed, especially the return of the trucks, it basically aims to restrict the access to the central EU market for hauliers from the outer states of the European Union, and we strongly are of the opinion that such discriminatory measures should not be incorporated into legislation and should not be allowed to pass. This being said, and being based on on the discriminatory position of the businesses and other aspects that have been discussed previously by all the speakers of this webinar. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Margevičiūtė. Now, after learning about companies' perspective on implementing the mobility package in times of COVID, very interesting would be to hear about transport employee perspective, truck driver perspective, and what they think about the most important needs of employees in times of COVID. Ms. Bleharczyk, professional driver and blogger tracking girl, you have 4 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Just at the beginning, I just need to check the connection because I'm in the road right now. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we hear you well.
Oh, right.
We see you.
Yeah, so hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. So when it comes to situation of truckers in terms of COVID-19, I've got to tell you that it's pretty good already. All the companies I visited recently had already their procedures, and all of the companies had like offered access for sanitary facilities for truckers, and the same when it comes to petrol stations and showers. So generally it is okay, I think, as far as I experienced. But when it comes to the situation to the package we are discussing today, to be honest, I cannot understand why would anybody create a new problem instead of solving an old one. And the old problems remains the same all the time, which is, first of all, infrastructure. For example, yesterday I've been driving in Czech Republic and I spent over 2 hours, and I started, it was around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening on searching on a free spot for a night, and it was a disaster. And finally I finished with 10 hours and 15 minutes of driving, which, as you know, is already illegal. Even today, I am in Germany right now, and I needed to over an hour to find a free spot to take that 45 minutes break, and again for 40 of driving, and again I broke the law, and it's not the second, it's not the first time during this trip. So this is one thing. So infrastructure and parking for truckers. The second thing is our sanitary facilities. First of all, in companies, still happens very often that companies where we are loading or unloading don't offer any sanitary facilities like restroom, toilets for the truckers, which who, as you know, very often spend hours in their companies. So for me, it is unacceptable. It's like treating us like non-humans, like robots or anything that don't have like any basic needs. So one thing. The other thing is the situation of showers and generally sanitary facilities on the petrol stations. First of all, we pay for it, and still there are very, very rarely the minimum standard health issues are met on those petrol stations, which means that they're always dirty. It's only a matter how dirty they are. And if you go to Italy or Spain, I'm telling you, you've got no idea what I'm talking about right now. And the other thing is generally safety on the road. And safety and respect. So generally, I think that Europe is very truckers unfriendly, especially comparing to America. And I am observing young generation of people and their attitude to work, and it's really hard for me to say what will encourage them to become truck drivers. Because I think that it's been always money or adventure that encouraged people to become truck drivers. But right now, you don't need to have balls and be a cowboy to become a truck driver. So when it comes to money, okay, we are making pretty good money, but just have a look at this. Those are my Tahoe printings from last two weeks. So if I'm going to have like strict inspection, I'm going to spend €1,000 on fines. And was it mindful? No, it's not. It wasn't the fact that I was searching for a parking lot 15 minutes before my working time was over. No, it was an hour, 2 hours, and still, there are some regulations, but there's no infrastructure. I cannot meet those regulations. So, and the other thing that very often when I talk to teenagers, I hear that they say they want to be a YouTuber. Generally, young people got so many alternatives, and there are so many attractive options for them, and it's really easy to make money right now. And being a truck driver is really sacrificing a lot of your private life. So, and the one plus I think is that are very nice trucks. Trucks are on one hand are very nice. So this is the positive aspect. But on the other hand, EU pushes brands to lower the emissions of the trucks, which means that trucks are less dynamic, slower, and it's not the same anymore. So there is a less pleasure from truck driving. So of course, eco issue generally is significant for every people on this person of this planet. But then I am asking the questions. So if the eco issue and being and pushing the transport to be more and more eco-friendly, then what about those empty runs every 8 weeks? So yeah, that's it. I'm done. Thank you. Is there anybody?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much for sharing with us your opinion about current situation truck drivers are facing in the EU and their most important needs. Maybe better for you if you could park somewhere, just because of safety reason, if it's possible.
I am in a traffic jam, so don't worry. I'm in Germany. Everything is okay already. The traffic jams are everywhere, so
And you have to your hands, I guess, on the, because you, yeah. Okay. Now, thank you very much again for your very interesting input. Now I open the floor for asking questions. Please write on chat a word question, and then I will be giving voice to you in sequence. Please introduce yourself as well. For your information, Mr. Wroński will be answering to your questions in Polish, but please do not worry, we have translator with us who will do translation from Polish to English simultaneously. So now, if someone would like to ask the question, it's a time you can write on chat or start talking with introducing yourself. Please, the floor is yours. Yes, I see the question from Ms. Han Koekelare. I'm not sure I pronounced your surname correctly. Please introduce yourself, and please, the floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Hanna Koekelare from Politico. I wanted to ask Mr. Garolis, you mentioned that there is a concern of the Commission's assessment, the impact assessment of the return of the truck and also the combined transports will not be done fast enough or soon enough to actually have an impact on, how the mobility package gets adopted. Could you explain exactly, where that concern comes from?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Yes, this is what we actually heard from Commission, and so far as we know, it's not started. At least we don't have any information about the assessment, and and questions that normally are coming to the market when kind of assessment is starts. And so we actually believe, and we are preparing ourselves for the worst case scenario that anyhow in some way this mobility package will be adopted in the middle of summer. But the good thing is that not all provisions will come into the power immediately. So it might be actually what we expect that this impact assessment done by Commission will be finalized in autumn, and maybe then will be possible to change some really bad provision in mobility package and to make and to adopt it more or less to the logistic situation and to make it more or less workable. Actually, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. Do you have any question, maybe another question, or someone else has a question? Especially that you really have, I think, very good opportunity. You have, you can ask truck driver about her perspective. You can ask our companies, and you can ask also our associations. So I think this is good opportunity for you. I see that you, Ms. Kokara, would be very happy to ask another question. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi. I'll just keep going then. I had one question. Apologies, I didn't really see the lady of the trucking company was speaking before. She was tagged just lawyer. But she mentioned how it was discriminatory to require companies to relocate to different countries, because this is what proponents of the mobility package have been arguing, right? There is no actual return of the truck every 8 weeks if you're located in the general region and general area where you're active. So could you expand a little bit on why that doesn't make sense in your perspective?
Well, first of all, my name is Agne Margevituta. So I would be glad to answer the question and comment more elaborately on this. First of all, if we are speaking about the single European market, which is strongly based on freedom of goods, services, and people, so we should stick to these principles, which are fundamental throughout the whole legislation that EU passes. When mobility package is being passed and you have a requirement that you require certain businesses to return the trucks back to their home bases, it is completely unreasonable, because the market is single, and all of a sudden you start singling out the different sectors of the European, of the single market of the European Union. This is especially has to do with the peripheral states of the European Union, the lower part of Europe, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, all the let's say eastern parts. Now we are suggested that, look, you can operate your vehicles if your home state, if your home business state is not acceptable to you geographically, relocate. Why should we relocate if we have a whole administrative the whole administrative sector set up in our home state. So you will be taking businesses away from actual member states and they will be relocated to other member states. And also, there's nothing wrong with exporting services from our state. So we are Lithuania, we are a successful haulier, and we export services to other member states. And the way the market is set up, we are allowed to operate our fleet, our vehicles all over Europe. And now I think all the countries that are set outside of the Central Europe, they will be discriminated because they will be forced. If we follow this logic of the policymakers and the legislators of the European Union, then you have a forced suggestion that, okay, relocate. It will be better for the Central Europe. Supposedly, it will be better for you, so you don't have to return your trucks. But the main reasoning behind that is to support the provision of the mobility package to include the return of the trucks. Why should trucks be returned? There is still no logical explanation except other than if it is included, it will highly restrict and it will highly restrict the situation of different businesses, and it will restrict the market, in fact. So it's a forced provision, and it's a forced suggestion. And to hear that policymakers even suggest these things to support their political provision, it's beyond our imagination. The sector itself is undergoing tremendous losses every day since the pandemic started. It's losses, millions under millions of euros, which EU market is losing. And now on top of that, a policymaker is suggesting to relocate a business so that he or she could support his provision in the mobility package to artificially return empty trucks. It means empty business, empty kilometers, empty emissions, which we are already exhausted. We have exhausted our limits today, both from the business economical part and both from the environmental part. So I hope this helps you to understand the logic behind my answer.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I also saw that Mr. Garuolis wanted to add something. Yes, please, the floor is yours. Then we will go to another question because I see already.
Thank you very much. While we are waiting for another question, maybe, yeah, because it's a bit different logic actually. We are, and Poland, of course, we are a transport services exporting country. And what we really need to explain maybe, or maybe it's better I will give you an example. What one would think if a truck produced in Germany would be allowed to transport and sold to the Sweden, will be allowed to go only to Sweden and back. So if we apply to the product this logic, it sounds crazy, but for some reason we don't want to accept that this strange logic now is to be applied for services. Of course, no one could agree that truck sold from Germany to Sweden is allowed to go only that road. But for service now, mobility package is pushing us to make shape of the logistic very, very strange. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input. Now I will read the next question from Evaldas Labanauskas, Lithuanian journalist. At what stage is now mobility package, and when could we expect the final approval? Are there any chances that some mobile package norms could be delayed and will not take into the action from July? As I don't see that this question has addressee, and as maybe I would, as Thomas Garwolis was already talking, maybe I would direct this question to Mr. Wroński, the president of TLP. So if you could answer this question, please, Mr. Wroński, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the translator to help me, because I won't express everything what I want to say. Mr. Anna, please translate my...
Sure, absolutely. This is not a question which should be directed to us, but to the authorities of the European Union. However, we have certain knowledge in this regard. Everything indicates that the mobility package will be finished July this year. Firstly, the provisions that will enter into force will the regulation 561/56. These are the regulations concerning mostly the time of driving the vehicle, the rest, the weekly rest, and so on. The remaining part of the mobility package, as a rule, will end later. That indicates that it will be implemented in the majority of the EU member states at the turn of years 2021 and 2022. Theoretically, that's a lot of time. However, we need to remember that it requires reorganizing of our old business, the way that we are conducting our business now. And so far, we haven't been able to mitigate the effects of COVID. And as Andrzej Szymański said, we are fighting to keep ourselves afloat. Unfortunately, all indicate that the economic impacts of COVID will last at least several months, if not a couple of years. I would like to be wrong, and I would like this shape of the economic drop and then economic increase resemble the V letter or the U letter. However, probably it will be L-shaped. And now we have a problem. How deeply will the crisis affect us? This vertical line, how long will it be? And here, any work on the mobility package seems very unfortunate in this situation. We should be working now on the measures to make the aid directed to our entrepreneurs resemble the average level of the similar aid provided to other EU member states. And we should now work on how to prepare to new phenomena. For instance, one of such phenomena is the general use of COVID as an excuse in negotiations with contractors. I don't know if you're aware that even very wealthy, affluent companies who received substantial aid from governments are sending now notices to carriers that their payments will be delayed by 30 or 60 days due to COVID pandemic. And this is what the European Commission should be dealing with right now. It should react to what's happening on the market. I would have really much to say about this subject, but this is in fact a subject for another webinar, another conference call. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wronski, for answering this question. As this question didn't have a particular addressee, also other speakers are invited to answer if you would like. Okay, as I don't see any one of you, so then we can still wait for some question. If there are still questions, please take the floor or write in on chat that you would like to ask the question. Yes, okay, as I don't see any questions, I think, and especially that we are already running slightly out of time, I would like to thank you all very much again for finding your precious time and taking part at our webinar press briefing. We'll send you all the data immediately after our webinar press briefing is over. So you will receive our studies, our presentations in press release material. As you can see, the mobility package is a very complicated and big piece of legislation, and implementing this in time of pandemic and economic downturn would be very challenging, could threaten the existence of transport sector, and could undermine the single market and the Green Deal in such crucial and difficult time for the entire EU. That's what our speaker, that's kind of summary of what was said by our speakers. And this is also the reason why, in our view, the mobility package should be really reassessed. Thank you very much again for your participation, and goodbye. Have a nice day.